Hey folks, this is Riker. Do you find yourself confused by some of the dialogue wheel graphics in Dragon Age Inquisition? We're going to take a look at what exactly each of those graphics means, and go over some quick ways to help you remember while you play. So first off, this graphic that we're looking at right now can be found in the game's manual. But let's face it, most people haven't read the manual, because most people don't know where to find the manual. Well, check the description below for a link to download the PDF yourself. But onto the symbols. The first symbol shows an arrow with two arrows branching off of it. This is the sort of default general case symbol meant to progress the conversation, and you can think of it as exploring different conversation branches. Next, green checkmark means yes, agree, or accept, real simple. Next, the red X means the opposite, no, rejection. The next symbol is a dude with his arms folded across his chest. Think of that strong silent type who sort of hangs back, arms folded, very grim, very stoic, very grounded, serious, short answers, doesn't talk much, cool, calm, and collected. Next, thumbs up, that means you like it. You're pleased, you're happy, you're agreeing. Next, the crying eye, you're sad. Next, the red fist signifies anger. Imagine that you are shaking your fist in anger. Anger at how you've contorted and broken your wrist. Look at that. Try to put your hand in that position. That's not possible unless you've dislocated your hand. Next, a head with a swirl in it, you're confused. Imagine that you've been spinning around. What happens after you've been spinning? You're dizzy, you're disoriented, you're confused. Next, a head with an exclamation mark, question mark, exclamation mark. Huh? You're surprised. There's literally no better way to visually represent WTF. Next, cross swords on a red background. Aggression. This ends the conversation and leads to combat. The next symbol is pretty rare. It's a type of star, and it only appears for certain characters under certain circumstances. So just be aware that this is a special conversation option, which may lead you to want to pick it when you do get to see it. Imagine the star as a symbol of something that stands out. It's outstanding. Just like in school, when you do well in kindergarten, you get a nice big star. Next, the question mark, very simple. You're asking questions, you're investigating, you want to know more. Next symbol is a coin purse. This indicates a matter about money, either reward or bribing. Next, the heart. This is the flirtation option. And while this can lead to romance, it's important to note that it's not guaranteed. You can't just do whatever the hell you want and keep picking the romance option and be guaranteed to romance that NPC. That NPC's approval rating towards you definitely comes into play, which is highly influenced by past conversations. Basically, it's just like in real life. If someone thinks favorably of you, and you flirt with them, then you're dashing and suave. But if they don't like you and you flirt with them, then you're just a big creep. Next option, the broken heart. That pretty much says it all. That cancels a romance, but it should be noted that this permanently ends a romance with that character. The next symbol's a little more difficult to interpret. It's a raven or a crow, and this is used to showcase your knowledge of the criminal underworld. You only have access to this if you've taken a special perk. The easiest way for me to remember this is to think of that as a crow, and a group of crows is called a murder, and murder's a crime, and crime is what criminals do. Next, we have a crown, and this displays your knowledge of politics. Again, this requires a perk, so think crown, king. King is a leader, leader is a political figure. Next, we have a big book, and this represents putting your knowledge of history and lore to work. Again, this requires a perk. And you can just think of this as a history book or a lore book, the kinds of which you've been looting for years. The next symbol's another tricky one. It represents using your knowledge of magic, also requires a perk, and I suppose you can say it looks something like a frost nova or some kind of fire and ice or blue fire thing. So just interpret it as a sort of magic symbol. The last 8 symbols we'll look at will only become available to you depending on your class and your race, and if you've been showing consistency in your answers up to that point. The first symbol is the sword and shield. This would represent a warrior answer. Think of your classic sword and board fighter. Next, we have that cat burglar mask. This is your rogue option. And just remember that the original rogue class in an RPG, all the way back in Dungeons & Dragons, was called the thief. Next, we have a hand with a symbol on it. This is your mage option. And you can interpret this as a hand that's casting a spell at you. Next graphic is basically just a human in profile, and surprise surprise, that's the human option. The next symbol's a bit of a mess. It's the human mage option. I could barely tell what we're looking at here, but you can argue that you're seeing some kind of arcane symbols or I don't know, there's very little visual clarity in that graphic, but I suppose you can say it stands out for that. Just looks like a bunch of stained glass to me. Next, we have an elfin profile. There's lots of green that helps you identify it as an elf in a nature setting. Then we have the dwarf. Clad in armor, you can see his beard. That's how you identify him as a dwarf. Sorry, Varric. And lastly, the Kunari symbol. Basically, it has blue-gray skin. I'll make one final note before signing off here. Those who played Dragon Age 2 are very familiar with the Witty Option. Basically, there was always a dialogue option that made you give some smart-ass answer that was hilarious. It doesn't look like Dragon Age Inquisition quite has this same system, or at least there's no visual to represent it. However, it does seem like when there is an option that is a little more sarcastic or smart-alecky, it tends to be the middle right option. That wraps up this guide. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment letting me know of any devices you use to remember what these symbols mean. Let me know what other videos you'd like to see. Stay tuned for more Dragon Age content. And until next time, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe.